The Battle of the Atlantic, the longest continuous military campaign in World War II, raged across the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean for 6 long years, from 1939 to 1945. This monumental struggle was not just a series of naval engagements, but a relentless and grueling contest that spanned the entire duration of the war. It was a battle fought not only on the surface of the ocean, but also beneath its waves, in the air above, and in the strategic minds of the leaders and planners on both sides. It was a brutal contest for control of the crucial sea lanes, a lifeline for the beleaguered nations of wartime Europe. These sea lanes were the arteries through which flowed the essential supplies of food, fuel, and raw materials, without which the war effort would have ground to a halt. The convoys of merchant ships, escorted by naval vessels, braved the treacherous waters of the Atlantic, facing the constant threat of enemy attack. For Great Britain, heavily reliant on supplies and resources from across the Atlantic, maintaining these sea routes was not just a strategic objective, but a matter of national survival. The island nation, cut off from the European continent, depended on the steady flow of goods to sustain its population and keep its war industries running. The stakes could not have been higher, as the loss of these vital supplies would have spelled disaster. Failure to do so meant starvation, industrial collapse, and ultimately, defeat. The British people endured rationing and shortages, but the successful defense of the Atlantic supply routes ensured that the nation could continue to resist and fight back against the Axis powers. The resilience and determination of the British people were matched by the bravery and skill of the sailors who manned the convoys and their escorts. The adversaries in this maritime struggle were Germany, led by the ambitious and ruthless Adolf Hitler, and Great Britain, under the resolute leadership of Winston Churchill. Hitler's strategy aimed to cut off Britain's lifeline, while Churchill was determined to keep the sea lanes open at all costs. The clash of these two titanic figures set the stage for a conflict that would determine the fate of nations. Germany, seeking to strangle Britain's supply lines, unleashed its formidable Kriegsmarine spearheaded by a new breed of naval predator, the U-boat. These submarines, with their stealth and deadly torpedoes, became the scourge of the Atlantic, sinking countless Allied ships and threatening to tip the balance of the war in Germany's favor. These submarines, lurking beneath the waves, posed a deadly threat to Allied shipping, turning the Atlantic into a perilous battleground. The U-boat crews, operating in the harsh and unforgiving environment of the deep ocean, waged a relentless campaign against the convoys, often with devastating effect. The battle was one of attrition, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The stakes of this maritime conflict were immense. Control of the Atlantic meant control of the flow of men and material, essential for sustaining the war effort. The outcome of the Battle of the Atlantic would have far-reaching consequences, influencing the course of the entire war and the future of Europe. Control of the Atlantic meant control of the flow of men and materiel, essential for sustaining the war effort. The convoys carried not only supplies but also troops and equipment, crucial for the Allied campaigns in Europe and beyond. The ability to move these resources across the ocean was a key factor in the eventual success of the Allied forces. For Germany, victory in the Atlantic promised to isolate Britain and pave the way for a successful invasion of the island nation. The German High Command believed that by cutting off Britain's supply lines, they could force the British to surrender, or at least weaken them to the point where an invasion would be feasible. The stakes were nothing less than the survival of Britain as a free and independent nation. For the Allies, securing the sea lanes was paramount to supporting their troops, supplying their industries, and ultimately achieving victory in Europe. The successful defense of the Atlantic routes allowed the Allies to build up their forces, launch offensives, and eventually liberate occupied territories. The Battle of the Atlantic was a critical component of the broader strategy to defeat the Axis powers. The Battle of the Atlantic was not just a clash of warships and submarines, but a battle of wits, technology, and sheer human endurance. Advances in radar, sonar, and code-breaking played a crucial role in turning the tide against the U-boats. The intelligence war, fought in the shadows, was as important as the battles on the surface and beneath the waves. It was a conflict that would test the limits of human courage and sacrifice on both sides, leaving an indelible mark on the course of World War II. The bravery of the sailors, the ingenuity of the engineers, and the determination of the leaders all contributed to the eventual Allied victory. The Battle of the Atlantic stands as a testament to the resilience and resolve of those who fought and endured in one of the most challenging theaters of the war. From the outset, the German U-boats, utilizing the element of surprise and operating with deadly efficiency, inflicted heavy losses on Allied shipping. These submarines, known as Unterseeboots or U-boats, were a formidable force in the early years of World War II. Their stealth and ability to strike without warning made them a significant threat to the Allied supply lines, which were crucial for the war effort. These underwater predators, often operating in coordinated groups known as wolf packs, preyed on unsuspecting merchant vessels, sinking them with torpedoes and deck guns. The wolf pack tactic involved multiple U-boats attacking a convoy simultaneously, overwhelming the defenses and maximizing destruction. This method proved highly effective, causing significant disruptions to the Allied supply chains. The vastness of the Atlantic, coupled with limited Allied anti-submarine capabilities, played into the hands of the German U-boat commanders, allowing them to strike with relative impunity. The sheer size of the ocean made it difficult for the Allies to patrol effectively, and the U-boats took full advantage of this, lurking beneath the waves and waiting for the perfect moment to attack. The early years of the battle were a time of great peril for the Allies. The losses were not just in terms of ships and cargo, but also in human lives. Each sinking ship meant the loss of precious resources and the lives of sailors and merchant mariners who were vital to the war effort. The psychological impact of these losses was profound, instilling fear and uncertainty among the Allied forces. The German U-boat campaign, dubbed Operation Drumbeat by the Germans, proved devastatingly effective. The U-boat crews, often young and highly motivated, celebrated their successes with a sense of invincibility. Their morale was high, bolstered by the significant damage they were inflicting on the Allies. This campaign was a testament to the strategic prowess of the German Navy and its ability to adapt to the challenges of naval warfare. Merchant ships, often sailing alone or in poorly defended convoys, fell victim to the U-boats' deadly torpedo attacks. The convoys, though intended to provide mutual protection, were frequently inadequately defended due to a shortage of escort vessels. This made them easy targets for the U-boats, which could strike swiftly and disappear before effective countermeasures could be taken. The losses were staggering, with thousands of tons of vital supplies going to the bottom of the ocean. These supplies included food, fuel, and military equipment, all essential for the war effort. The sinking of these ships not only deprived the Allies of critical resources, but also strained their ability to sustain the war effort over the long term. The Allies, caught off guard by the ferocity and effectiveness of the German U-boat offensive, struggled to counter the threat. Their initial responses were hampered by outdated tactics and a lack of effective anti-submarine technology. The Allies had to quickly adapt and innovate to develop new strategies and technologies to combat the U-boat menace. Their anti-submarine tactics were outdated, their escort vessels too few, and their technology lagging behind that of the Germans. The Allies had to rely on older methods and equipment, which were often ineffective against the advanced U-boats. This technological gap posed a significant challenge, requiring a concerted effort to develop and deploy more effective anti-submarine measures. The vastness of the Atlantic, initially an advantage for the Allies, now worked against them, providing ample hiding spaces for the German submarines. The U-boats could exploit the vast expanse of the ocean to evade detection and launch surprise attacks. This made it difficult for the Allies to establish effective patrols and protect their convoys. As Allied losses mounted, so too did the pressure on Britain's war effort. The island nation, heavily reliant on imports, faced the grim prospect of shortages in food, fuel, and raw materials. The U-boat campaign threatened to cut off these vital supplies, putting immense strain on the British economy and war effort. The island nation, heavily reliant on imports, faced the grim prospect of shortages in food, fuel, and raw materials. Rationing became a way of life for the British people, who had to make do with limited resources. The government implemented strict measures to ensure that the available supplies were distributed fairly and used efficiently. The situation was dire, and the survival of Britain, the last bastion of freedom in Western Europe, hung precariously in the balance. The British people, however, showed remarkable resilience and determination. They rallied together, supporting the war effort in any way they could, from working in factories to serving in the military. This collective effort was crucial in sustaining the nation during these dark times. Faced with the very real threat of defeat in the Atlantic, the Allies poured their resources into developing new technologies and tactics to combat the U-boat menace. One of the most significant breakthroughs was the development of radar, which allowed Allied ships to detect surfaced U-boats, even in darkness or poor weather. This technological advancement proved to be a game-changer, stripping the U-boats of their cloak of invisibility. Another crucial development was the introduction of escort carriers, small aircraft carriers that could accompany convoys and provide air cover. These carriers, equipped with long-range patrol aircraft, could search for and attack U-boats far from the protection of land-based airfields. The ability to project air power into the mid-Atlantic significantly hampered the U-boat's ability to operate freely. The Allies also made significant strides in anti-submarine warfare tactics. They began to organize their merchant ships into larger, more heavily defended convoys, making it more difficult for the U-boats to isolate and pick off individual targets. The adoption of the convoy system, coupled with improved anti-submarine weaponry and tactics, began to turn the tide of the battle in the Allies' favor. The Battle of the Atlantic reached its peak in 1943, with both sides committing significant resources to the struggle. This was a pivotal year, marking a turning point in the longest continuous military campaign of World War II. The stakes were incredibly high, as the control of the Atlantic sea routes was crucial for the supply chains that sustained the Allied war effort. The North Atlantic in particular became a cauldron of conflict, with numerous large-scale convoy battles taking place. The harsh weather and treacherous seas added to the peril, making each journey a test of endurance and bravery for the sailors involved. The convoys, often consisting of dozens of merchant ships, were lifelines carrying vital supplies including food, fuel, and military equipment. Convoys such as SC-122, HX-229, and ONS-5 became synonymous with the ferocity and brutality of the battle, with heavy losses inflicted on both sides. These convoys faced relentless attacks from German U-boats, which were determined to cut off the Allied supply lines. The losses were staggering, with many ships and lives lost in the icy waters of the Atlantic. The convoy battles were brutal affairs. The constant threat of attack created an atmosphere of tension and fear, as sailors knew that a torpedo could strike at any moment. The destruction wrought by these battles was immense, with ships often being torn apart by explosions and fires raging on the open sea. German U-boats, often operating in packs of a dozen or more, would stalk the convoys for days, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. These wolf packs were a formidable force, using stealth and coordination to launch devastating attacks. The U-boat crews were highly trained and motivated, knowing that their success could cripple the Allied war effort. Allied escort vessels, tasked with protecting the merchant ships, fought with great tenacity, utilizing radar, sonar, and depth charges to counter the U-boat threat. These escort ships, including destroyers and corvettes, played a crucial role in the defense of the convoys. Their crews worked tirelessly, often under extreme conditions, to detect and destroy the lurking submarines. The battles raged for hours, even days, with the outcome often hanging in the balance. The prolonged engagements tested the endurance and resolve of all involved. The sailors had to remain vigilant and ready to respond to threats at any moment, knowing that their survival depended on their ability to outlast and outfight the enemy. Amidst the chaos and carnage of these convoy battles, stories of incredible courage and sacrifice emerged. Sailors risked their lives to save their comrades, and many performed acts of heroism that would be remembered long after the war. These stories of bravery provided inspiration and hope, even in the darkest moments of the conflict. Merchant seamen, braving torpedo attacks and icy waters, displayed remarkable resilience in their duty to keep the supply lines open. These civilian sailors faced the same dangers as their military counterparts, and their contribution to the war effort was invaluable. Their determination to deliver their cargo, despite the constant threat of attack, was a testament to their courage and dedication. Naval officers and sailors aboard destroyers and corvettes fought with unwavering determination, knowing that the fate of the war might hinge on their actions. Their leadership and bravery were crucial in the fight to protect the convoys and ensure the safe passage of vital supplies. The success of these missions often depended on their ability to make quick, decisive actions under pressure. The Battle of the Atlantic was a testament to the human spirit, tested and tempered in the crucible of war. The resilience, bravery, and determination of those who fought in these battles were instrumental in securing victory for the Allies. Their sacrifices and efforts ensured that the lifeline across the Atlantic remained open, ultimately contributing to the defeat of the Axis powers.